Well, good afternoon, Mr. Feldman. It's good to have you, and thank you for taking part.
Thank you for having me.
So we're going to start at the very beginning. Can you tell us your place and date of birth?
Sure. I was born in Chicago, Illinois, and my date of birth is May 13th of 1949.
What brought you to Flagler County?
Well, obviously, like I said, I was born and raised in Chicago. I lived in Oklahoma for 4.5 years, went back to Illinois and started my profession, which is law enforcement. Worked there for a number of years, and bottom line is I got very tired of the cold weather. And so I moved to South Florida where my mom and dad lived at the time. And I went to work down there and I spent 25 years with the South Miami Police Department, retired as assistant chief there. Have spent some time with the city of West Miami Police Department as a volunteer, mentoring and teaching the young guys. And I still do that once and occasionally, not too often. And that's how I got to Florida. How I got to Flagler County was it was time for my wife and I. We decided, I mean, we've been together now 45 years, and we decided it was time to get out of Miami. There have been a lot of changes, and a lot of them were not positive. So we came up here because my sister-in-law and brother-in-law lived here. And we came up here, we found property in '05. We built and had a house as of '07. She got up here on disability in 2009 or 2010, and I got up here permanently in 2013.
When you say not positive changes in Miami, such as,
It became too crowded and kind of reflective of the conversations we hear today. The traffic was horrific. And just as an example, if I left I worked downtown Miami for a while for the Department of Children and Families, right downtown. And if I left my house at 8 a.m., I would be lucky to sit in my office at 10.
oh,
And it was 16.6 miles because there are several times I rode my bicycle down.
hmm. Well, and of course you're a Republican. You're in the Republican primary.
Yes.
You've always been a Republican?
No, absolutely not. I was a Democrat in South Florida for quite a while. Became unhappy with the politics that were going on in Miami. It's hard to describe. It's almost like there were a number of people there who wanted to be bigger than they were. And I got tired of that. I switched to independent. I came up here, and a year later, switched to Republican. So I've been a Republican since late 2014, early 2015.
In your time in Flagler County, what have you been engaged in? What have you done? You've been mostly retired or you've worked?
I've been mostly retired. I did, in fact, work for the sheriff's office for 3 years as a manager there of volunteer services. I'm also actively involved in things like I'm on the board of directors of Tiger Bay.
Mhm.
I'm on the board, recently appointed to the board for Northeast Florida Crime Stoppers. I'm part of the Republican Executive Committee. I'm the county representative for the Volusia Flagler TPO, Transportation Planning Organization. I'm the current chair of the Community Advisory Council, which is where we take the public comment and we relay what we believe based upon public comment to the full body of the TPO. And I've been doing that. I did that before the sheriff's office for a couple of years, and I've been on it now for almost 4 years since.
What led to the departure from the sheriff's office?
It was time. The budget, there was an alteration in the budget. My position was eliminated, and it was time.
So, what have you done to prepare yourself for the county commission job from day one?
From day one,
In
it's a
other
great
words, what
question.
what what have you done to prepare to be ready from day one?
It's a great question. When I come into a community, no matter where it's been, either South Florida, Oklahoma, here, I become immersed in the community very quickly. I talk to people, I learn what's going on, I learn the history of the county. I learn, frankly, the positives and the negatives. It's important for me to know these things. So I have always paid close attention to the functions of government, how it's run, who is running it, and I always approach it kind of like law enforcement on the what can we do better. So that's how I prepare it is paying attention, watching, listening, watching commission meetings on usually not there personally because it's easier for me to watch it on on the internet because then later on I can go back and say, wait a minute, what was said here or what were they referring to there? And it just makes it easier. If I'm sitting there in person, then I kind of run back home, bring it up and figure out where it was.
Have you studied some of their documents, some of their essential documents? Which would you consider essential, and what have you studied in terms of that
One of the most
documentation?
important ones is the budget.
Right.
And I've looked at the budget, I've read the budget. Like any budget, there's always something that catches your eye. And a few things have caught my eye, such as, well, I'd have to have it in front of me right now to give you a specific example, but there are always things that you wonder, kind of like when you get your own charge card bill and you look at something, you say, did I really buy that? Did I really spend that? There's things that are in the budget where I might look and say, did we really need that? Now, there might be an explanation I don't know because it's not in the budget itself, but I just pay attention.
There's nothing glaring that stands out in your memory as far as one of those examples?
Not in a positive way, but the one of the issues to me is that I don't believe fire rescue is properly funded, and I've been saying this all along since I started campaigning. So that jumps out at me.
Okay. How do you arrive at a decision? What's your method?
I look at the question. I think about what I would feel towards the question. I look for information, either I do a Google search, I look for outside information, I look at the count at the documents that are affected. There's usually some type of paperwork on that. And most importantly, I listen to what people have to say about it. And I'm not talking about necessarily the folks on Facebook who just have a negative opinion about everything. I talk to people, talk to you. I would talk to at a meeting of different organizations. I want the feedback. People are choosing me to represent them. So my opinion, quite frankly, is secondary. What do the majority of people who come to me think? Now, having said that, it needs to be an informed viewpoint. People can't come to me and say, well, you got to do this when in reality it's illegal
Mhm.
or it's against ethics. So overall, I really want to know what people think about specific issues. And if they don't have any thought about it, that's fine too. But if there's a specific issue that there's a lot of concern, I want to hear from everybody because I don't know everything. I want to know what 10 people think about a certain issue so that my decision, whatever it is better informed and better educated.
How do you go from that to being decisive when it's when you have to be?
My experience in my career has been that I've made decisions all along. Some of the decisions I've had months to prepare and study and research, and some of them have happened in seconds. So I'm able to make decisions. It just depends how critical they are. Can I make them in seconds? Yes, absolutely. Would I prefer to have more information in front of me? Absolutely. But sometimes it's just not there.
You can make a decision independent of a chamber full of people who are against what you stand for.
Can I make that decision? Is it in the public interest to make that decision in a positive way against them or not? And that's what I have to weigh because there might be a chamber full of folks, but is there something else that perhaps hasn't been communicated to them? And communication's the key. But is there something that hasn't been communicated to them that might make them maybe not like the decision, but at the very least understand why we're doing this? We have to have open lines of communication. We have to make people understand why these decisions are happening. And then if they're still, unhappy with me, I have to do what's right for the whole community, the whole county. I'm there. Yes, I'm elected from District 2, but I'm there on behalf of the whole county, be it the west side, the center, which is Palm Coast, or beach side. I have to represent the whole county.
Well, typically those questions arise with gray areas, as with development. And I think you live in the hammock, right?
Yes, sir.
And the hammock has had these issues where, for instance, the community is deeply against a land development project. And there is a bit of a gray area in terms of the overlay, the scenic A1A overlay, and so on, where there is room there for arguments and for the county commission to actually make a decision one way or the other, whether they should approve such and such a commercial development, the way it's designed, or even a housing development, as there
Mhm.
has been a couple of cases like that, in opposition to the vast majority of the public that says, no, you're changing the character of our hammock, you should not do it. So in instances like this, where you've got the room full against the decision for development, how would you see yourself reacting?
Well, question one is if we go against that, are we breaking the law? In other words, civil law is not criminal law, of course,
Yeah.
but are we going against the land development code to the point where we're being negligent? One of the ways I describe that, and this isn't necessarily the hammock, this is overall, is that let's say you have an area of 1 acre estate homes, a large area of 1 acre estate homes. If somebody were to come to the county and say, I would like to build an in-law suite, or I'd like to build a home for my kids who can't afford one, I'd like to have a second home on the acre. If it came to me again through staff, I probably wouldn't have a heartache over that because I imagine most of the neighbors wouldn't either. But in that same area, all 1 acre homes, and a developer or a builder buys an acre and says, I'm going to put 12 townhomes there. Now, number one, I'd be upset with staff that it even got to the commission. But number two is I cannot approve that because there's minimal public good. It's not in character with the neighborhood, and it changes the value for everyone else. And that's the way I would explain what you're saying. What you're asking, rather, is that it depends on all these different legalities. Is it a variance? How much of a variance? Who does it affect around there?
Mhm.
And it's not really as simple as, well, it says it in the book, therefore it is.
Yeah.
We have to also respect change.
We have the benefit of hindsight, of course, but if we look at the Bing's Landing decision, which led to the lawsuit, which the county lost. And then I'm talking about the Captain's Barbecue plan
Mhm.
to build a different restaurant,
Right,
and they sued because of um, uh, all the changes that the commission did. First accepting it, then rescinding it. Or if we look at the Hammock Harbor um, decision regarding the warehouse for the boats,
right.
220 boats, I think, is the plan. Again, the county stopped them. They challenged in court, and they reached a settlement. In both of those instances, do you think the county mishandled the issues at the time with what they knew?
I don't want to point a finger and say when I don't have enough information on the machinations. In other words,
Yeah,
what
no,
was
no,
going on.
certainly not to point fingers. I'm just saying, like,
Yeah,
if you had been in their shoes and knowing to some extent what we know now, but as far as what they knew at the time,
yeah,
because those were very emotional issues that involved a lot of people who turned out, like we were just saying,
right.
and
Oh, yeah.
um, and the commissioners felt like they were limited in their choices. I'm just curious how you might have voted on those two.
Well, pre-contract, I think I might have pushed for a little bit different um, structure with regard to Bing's Landing. Post-contract, once you have that contract, we're we're there. I mean, legally, we're there. So making changes that are not mutually agreed upon is just asking for a lawsuit. Would I have done it differently in the preliminaries? More than likely, more than likely. But there again, once the contract's done, and it's the same thing to a degree with the boat storage. Um, what should we have done different? What should we, being the county, what should they have done? Because I'm not there yet, obviously. But what should they have done differently? I'm not sure. Should the county have made an offer to buy the property?
Well, that would
Might
have
have
been
made a
with what money though? I mean,
Well, that's all. That's always the choice. That's always the
I don't
choice.
know
Well, we
that
had
that
a
was
good
ever
down
in the
payment.
cards. I'm not sure that that was ever possible.
Well, maybe nobody thought of it, or maybe nobody made the offer either.
Hmm. Okay.
What if that had happened and the county could have put a small boat launch there with, say,
Hmm.
parking for a dozen vehicles and trailers, and it would have just turned it into a county asset.
Tell me about a character flaw that affects the way you might do your work on the commission.
I don't know if it affects my work, but I've been told more than once that I wear my heart on my sleeve.
Well, you know that that's not a character flaw. You know that
Well,
that's
to many people it is.
well. Well, aside from that, I mean, in terms of something that really, that maybe, your wife might tell you, well, this is how what would your wife say? What would your wife say is your character flaw, but in a professional sense, in a professional setting, like in the workplace, and how you might imagine yourself on the commission and having that affect you. What would that be?
Sure. Well, again, I've been told in my past that I explain too much, that I tend to say, this is what we need to do, or this is what I like to do. And let me tell you why. And 10 minutes later, I'm still explaining. And I've been told that, okay, explain it more succinctly and be done with it. So that to me is a flaw because it's going to eat up, it eats up precious time. So it draws things out. So I try to be more cognizant, even in my answers to you, I try to be more cognizant of brevity, not to the point where I'm shorting information out, but not drawing it out.
As you know, I don't even know the meaning of the word brevity.
Oh yeah.
That,
That
um,
now that was your first joke, okay?
All right, so tell us about this county commission as you've seen it work. Give it a letter grade on its performance in the last 2 years.
We've had a lot of challenges, and for the most part, they've done well, but I think they could have done a whole lot better in certain arenas. I would give the commission as a whole, I would give a B to B minus.
B to B minus. Yeah.
Yes, sir. I would have liked to have seen more. How can I put this? I'm trying to describe a thought right now. I think that there are sometimes when I'd like to see more decisive action instead of, well, let's table this until, let's table that until, maybe we should dot dot dot. Sometimes you, again, going back to my law enforcement career, sometimes you have all the information you need, all the information you're going to get in front of you. Why are we delaying?
Okay. So I was going to ask you what you might think as where they're lacking. So it sounds like you would approve of the way Andy Dance has handled the increase in workshops precisely to go over materials more thoroughly or more deliberately, which they didn't previously used to do.
Well, I'm not targeting any one individual when I say what I say. I hope that's clear. I'm not targeting Andy or anyone else, but
No, I'm saying that you would be supportive of his approach to more
no,
work. Yeah.
I got that. It depends on the issue. Something that's simplistic.
Mm.
We as a commit when I'm there. I keep clarifying that. I keep
That's
saying
all right.
we, but reality is, um, we should be able to sit there on smaller things and not have to workshop things to death.
Mhm.
But Andy usually picks the really, really large scale issues and to examine it more thoroughly, unless it's critical. If we're talking about how do we react to a hurricane, obviously that's immediate. But when you have certain issues that you have to critique and you have to look at all sides, you have to discuss it, obviously, in the public arena, and you have to really digest all the information, then I think a workshop is a great way to go because everything's out in the open. There's complete transparency because everything you're saying, the world can watch if they want. And then at least people watching and people who truly care and are affected by it, they can see where the process was. And then, of course, as a commissioner, they can come in and give me their feedback and say, you're right on this, you're wrong on this. Now I understand this. I'll never understand this, or and everything in between.
How would you judge the sort of semi-firing of Heidi Petito?
Again, I wasn't on the commission. I personally believe that Ms. Petito was doing a good job. Now, again, I'm not on the inside, so I don't know the other nuances that might have happened behind the scene that ordinary folks like me would never know. But I truly believe that Ms. Petito was doing a very good job. She seemed to be a strong leader. She was willing to stay and shepherd the budget through, which is no easy task. I've done budgets in South Florida. It's not a fun experience. She seemed like she was being above board with everything. She struck me as a very honest individual. So perhaps I would have handled it differently if I was sitting there.
There's a follow-up question I meant to ask you in the first segment of our series of questions, which was who on the boards currently serving you would consider to be mo a model of leadership? Any local board, not just the county commission.
Hmm. Let me refresh my throat while I think about
Yes,
that.
certainly. Yeah.
I'm doing a Marco Rubio set.
No, I have to do the same.
Thank you. You talking about currently?
Currently, yes, preferably. Yeah.
Okay.
You know, Flagler Beach, county commission, school board, city councils.
Yeah. I'm thinking. I'm thinking. I
So
think Andy has done a very good job. Truthfully, I think he truly has on the county commission. Um, I think that he's thoughtful. He's deliberate. He doesn't shoot from the hip. I think he's analytical. He asks the tough questions when necessary. Um, he's one that comes to mind. I'm trying to think if there's a lot of people. Please, nobody misunderstand. There's a lot of people on the various councils and commissions that I have total respect for.
yeah.
In fact, I have respect for anybody that puts themselves out there to be in a position like
Well,
that.
let me throw you this curveball then. And I would have asked you had you been running against her as if she was the incumbent in that position, why would you think you would be better in her place? She is a bit of an incumbent since she's on the city council, but what about Ms. Pontieri? What do you think about her style of leadership? And why do you think you would be better serving the public rather than she?
You know, Pierre, this may not go over well, but I'm going to decline to comment negatively on my opponent. What I'm going to do is talk about myself. I believe that I have a great pulse with the community because I do go out there a lot. I participate in a lot of events, and I'm not always an active participant. There are times when I'll go to a meeting and just sit in the back and listen because I want to see what's being said. I don't have some of the encumbrances that an incumbent would have in that I haven't been exposed to certain types of people, certain groups, certain lobbying groups, et cetera. And I think that's an advantage no matter
Mhm.
who was who was the competition, be it an incumbent in this position or an incumbent in another position.
Yeah,
But
I'm certainly not necessarily asking you to be negative, but I was coming at the question from the point of view of leadership. If you saw leadership skills in a certain person, or even in her case, I mean, are there leadership abilities you see even there? Um,
everybody has some leadership abilities. I mean, you can pick who you consider the weakest commissioner in some board, and they still have some leadership qualities.
yeah,
Now, some have more than others. As I cited with Andy and Greg Hansen, they're good leaders. They really care about the community. And I'm not saying the others aren't, but you're asking me for examples. For myself, leadership to me means setting a pace, enabling, and then sitting back. In other words, if on the county commission, we're the board of directors. The county administrator is the CEO. The director of finance is the chief financial officer, etc. You get the picture. We set policy. We don't tell them you have to do X, Y, Z, and here's the process. We tell them this is what we want you to do, either come back with a plan or execute it. When I ran a detective unit for one of my agencies, and I didn't have, it wasn't a big one. I think I had 9 people.
Mhm.
And I always told them that I'm going to give you an assignment. There's only 2 times I want to see you. Number one, if there's a challenge. Number two, when you're done and you want to report it. Other than that, I trust you. You're on your own. You wouldn't be in this position if I didn't believe you could do it. And then I just got out of their way. And I believe that's the ultimate role of the commission: set the policy and get out of the way.
What are a couple of goals that you are aligned with this commission, and a couple of goals that you're not?
Hmm. Well, I know you're going to ask me this at a later time, but I will tell you that and again, I might get beat up for this, but I'm not aligned with the negative on the half-cent sales tax.
We're going
And
to
I'll tell
get
you,
to that. That's going to be one of our questions, specifically on the half-cent sales tax. So if you could
okay,
save that one, and if we could talk about other goals, I mean, it's maybe not fair, but if you could sort of come up with different things that you might not be aligned with them, um, that uh, you know, which would those be?
well, I think I'm answering your question when I say I don't think that the current councils and commissions have adequately addressed the roadway congestion, the traffic,
Mhm.
et cetera. I think that we could be more aggressive in that. We have to be more aggressive in that. Anybody who's been on our roads knows we have to be more aggressive than that. Um, and we need to come up with solutions to that. And I'm sure it's being discussed. Again, no slight against any commissioner council, but I don't think it's being discussed as aggressively as needed, especially when you're talking to the state, because after all, we have 3 separate jurisdictions over our traffic lights and roadways. You have the county for some, you have the city for some, and the other cities for some. And then, of course, you have the state. They control State Road 100, they control State Road 11. So we have to all sit down at the table, and we need to do it sooner rather than later and say, this is the problems. How do we get the TPO on board? How do we get the state on board? How do we get the money to do it before it's obsolete? The plan is obsolete.
I mean,
And
there
I've seen
seems to
certain,
be a lot of what you're describing is taking place. Obviously, there's a lot of involvement locally including you apparently, since I didn't know you were involved with the TPO, but they are involved and they are getting their voices across and saying these are where the needs are. And I think TPO agrees. But then when the state comes in and says, all right, we do have a plan for 100, but it's going to be a few years. Um, uh, that seems to
to tell you when it is, it's 2035.
so well that's a long distance. So
Yes,
what
sir.
can the local officials do at that point when the state DOT has made its decision?
Well, as you've seen in the past, there's this place called Tallahassee,
Mhm.
and there's this group up there called the legislature. And we have a representative in the House and we have a representative in the Senate. And I think that we need to strongly, strongly work with them to see exactly what they can do for Flagler County. They have big decisions that affect the whole state. I understand that. But there is always discretionary funding at all the departments in the state that can be moved dependent upon necessity. And of course, with 100, in my opinion, it's a safety issue at this point.
Mhm.
It's a safety issue. People are going to get more and more angry. They're going to rush the traffic lights. They're going to rush the intersection, cut people off. And I don't want to see anybody hurt on our roadways. And yet, just coming out of Benell today, when I got to Belterra on 100, there was a flipped over trailer and a damaged truck and 2 deputies there. Now, I don't know what happened,
Mhm.
but it certainly wasn't good for the trailer and it wasn't good for traffic. So we need to be more aggressive. Even if even if it takes us going to Tallahassee and lobbying and lobbying and lobbying for these solutions, and that's with FDOT.
Of course, Greco is no Renner.
No, but he will be. I have confidence that someday he will be, but he can still work for us.
By then it'll be 2035 and the money will be there.
Well, that's not very positive, is it?
Well,
No,
just being a
he'll
bit
work for us
realistic, yeah.
today. So if we can get it from 2035 to 2029 or 2030 and understand the process, that's engineering.
Mm,
And that is acquiring the property to do these things if you have to. So even if at 2035, you're looking at a roadway completion in probably 38. So
mm,
if we can get that moved 5 years to 2030, we'll be done by 32, 33. I know it's still a long way off, but every year you can knock that
mm.
off is better,
Yeah.
is better because a roadway project, unfortunately, people think a roadway project, happens poof, poof, poof. And it doesn't. It takes a lot of money. It takes an engineering study. It takes right-of-way acquisitions, all those things. And then, of course, it takes the actual construction.
A couple of goals that you are aligned with are a couple of things that you're very supportive of on the commission going on now.
Well, constantly going on, of course, is sensitive lands. And I'm very supportive
Oh,
of that.
we're going to get to that as well. Of course, that's not necessarily the county commission's action. I mean, it's the voters. They've been very
Right.
supportive. But I mean, in terms of strategic action plans, in terms of the goals that the commission has in place as its own policy and vision, what are a couple that you are supportive of?
Well, I'm very supportive of tourism development.
Yeah.
And of course, tourism is a huge advantage for our county. Most people don't understand that, but our tourism, directly and indirectly, employs over 9,000 people in our county. And those are your friends and neighbors who are working for this or that. And again, indirectly as well as directly. That's number one. Number two is, and most people don't know this, is that tourism has a very direct effect on everybody in the county. According to figures from tourism, uh, the taxes collected and through the tourist tax and through sales tax has an indirect effect on the taxation of everyone in this county to the tune of approximately $443 a year. And that doesn't matter if you live on the far west side in Daytona North, in Palm Coast, or even on the beach side. So what we're doing for tourism development, I think, is really important. The direction's been set, and we just need to keep moving forward with
I- I'm not
tourism direction.
I'm not sure I understand the $443 figure. How do you get at that figure?
That if we weren't receiving these funds through tourism, I didn't get to it. This is from, let me back up.
Mhm.
This is not my figure. This is from the Tourism Development Office. That's their figure. And what it means to me is that indirectly, if
Oh,
we had no tourism and no tourism tax, I should say, the rental costs, rental surcharge, all that, it could conceivably cause a higher impact in the cost of doing business, of living and budgeting in the county. That's what it is.
yeah, I see what you
Right.
mean. I've had
Yeah.
quite a few issues with the way they derive their figures because they're extrapolated again and again
Okay.
from they're as if extrapolated from extrapolation. So the reliability of the figures may not be as solid as we would want them to be.
Okay.
But that's a sort of it's a separate issue. But I see
Right.
where
I
you're
haven't done the
coming from.
analysis myself, so I
Right.
have to accept the information on face.
So how will you vote on the proposed amendment to raise the homestead tax?
I'm still up in the air about it because truthfully, we don't know the real numbers. I would like to know the real numbers. Um, there's there's a lot of confusion about it. I personally believe the amendment is, like most amendments, poorly written. It really doesn't explain that much. The bill itself doesn't explain that much. How are we going to make up any shortfall? I don't care if it's a minimal shortfall. How are we going to make it up, or what would we have to cut? What is considered, it says public safety. What's public safety? I know we know it's law enforcement. We know it's fire. Does it include the emergency management? Does it include the EOC? And it's not spelled out. It says you can't cut essential services, but it doesn't define essential services. To you, and I'm not picking on you, but to you, the library might be an essential service, but to the majority of people, it's not. So what do we do? And again, we have to see the numbers first. We have will it pass? I don't know. Number two is we have to see the numbers, where exactly that will leave us in the ensuing years. And also we have to see part of that amendment charges the legislature with implementing statutes which ultimately completely eliminate the
Right.
ad valorem
But
tax.
even without the precise numbers, we do know that it's going to be a very severe hit on general fund budgets, right? Will you agree to
I
that?
personally believe I personally believe it's going to be a severe hit. How severe? We got to, again, let's wait for the numbers. Also, is there anything Tallahassee's going to do now that they've initiated this? Is there anything that they might consider doing to assist counties? And not just Flagler, but there aren't that many donor counties. You have the large ones. You have Miami-Dade, you have Collier, Palm Beach, Broward. Those are probably donor counties. But then you get into counties, not necessarily like us, but what about the smaller counties that have 18,000 people? Families have been there for 40,
Mhm.
50 years. Their taxes are minimal now, and they're going to be tax exempt because their value of their house is not 250. How are you then going to run essential services? Forget the extra benefits, that you don't normally think about. How are they going to run fire? How are they going to run law enforcement?
You sound like
These
you
are
could be
questions that are out there.
you sound like you could be a spokesman for the advocacy against the amendment, and yet you're undecided.
I'm undecided because again, I want to number one, I want to see what the will of the people is. If it doesn't pass, that's the will of the people. Whatever it is, if it passes, doesn't pass, that's what the will of the people
But
is.
that's in
And
November. Up until then, you have an
right,
influence out on the campaign trail in what you say about it and in how it's going to affect you as a county commissioner if you're elected. So you literally have a hand in being able to convince voters, here's what I think you should think about. Here's how I'm going to vote because it's going to do this and that to the county that I would like to be a part of. So in that context is, I'm surprised that you would still be undecided.
I'm telling people, please read up, find as much information as you can about the amendment. Read up all about it. If you have the time, read the actual paperwork for the amendment.
Yeah.
Then, if you have questions, ask the questions. But again, I don't want to tell people, well, I'm voting this way, so you should vote this way. That's not me. I want people to make informed decisions. And I know not everybody does. A lot of people just look and say, whoa, I'm not going to have a tax bill anymore, which, as you and I both know, is not correct because it
Yeah.
only affects the ad valorem. You're still going to have school taxes. You're still going to pay for some mosquito control. You're going to pay for this fine, Florida Inland Navigation. Now, these are very small numbers, but still, there is going to be a tax bill. For me, I've done the numbers, and my school tax is 42% of my total tax bill. So, yes, my ad valorem will go down, but I'm still going to wind up paying that.
Right.
And I look at it as after my youngest son is going to be 42 next month. I haven't used that school system in a lot of years, and yet I'm paying the same thing as somebody who has 5 children in the system, proportion percentage wise.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. And I'm okay with that because it's my contribution to making the county, the world, country a better place with more educated students. I kind of look at ad valorem tax the same way. Do I use the library? Quite frankly, once or twice a year,
Hmm.
but I don't mind paying so that it's
Right.
there.
Well, would you be worried about
Obviously, law
telegraphing?
enforcement. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Would you be worried about telegraphing your decision because you might lose some votes?
No, no, not everybody's going to like me. That I'm not worried about. If somebody doesn't want to vote for me because I'm undecided or I'm kind of leaning towards one way or the other, you know what? That's fine. I don't take any of that personally. It's just I don't want to directly influence anyone to vote one way or the other. For the sake, that's why it's really hard to explain. I'm doing the best I can, but I know I'm stumbling around. But I just don't want to. It's akin to me telling somebody you need to vote this way. No, I'm not going to do that. I want you to read. I want you to be informed. And again, I'm not talking about the comments on Facebook. I'm talking about read the actual documentation behind it, the legislative review, the legislative summation.
Yeah.
Read some of the articles from some of the legitimate news entities, and the, and if you have questions, ask the questions. I'll answer a question, but I'm not going to look at somebody and say, "Here, vote this way."
How did you react to Sheriff Staley when he spoke to the county commission, was either the county commission or the city council, about the amendment? And he really was not too happy about the amendment or its writing or its clarity. How did you react to it?
Well, I kind of agree that it doesn't have much clarity. That's part of the problem. But the sheriff is a very important cog within the government wheel, number one. I'm hoping that he's speaking like that because he has looked at the projections and he has looked at conceivably what he may have to do or shift around or even lose out on. And I don't know. But remember, too, that the sheriff, while he carries a lot of weight as the sheriff and a constitutional officer, he's also a citizen. And he also has the right to express his feeling. Does it carry more weight than me or you? Yes, it does, because he's the sheriff, the elected sheriff. It carries more weight. People tend to listen stronger and see what he has to say and accept and evaluate his points. But the bottom line is he's a citizen. He has the absolute right to express his opinion.
But he also challenged local officials to do their part and speak the way he spoke in terms of, look, this is going to cost us and it might be very damaging. That's why I was, asking how you might be speaking about this on the campaign trail.
And I think I answer that in that I'm not going to tell people how I feel like I will vote because number one, I'm still a little on the fence. I'm hoping in the next month or so to get some clearer direction on what this will do to the
Yeah.
county
Let's
instead of just
assume,
a number,
let's assume it passes. Um,
right?
what does the county do to make up for the loss?
That's a real tough one because not knowing what the loss is, how much do we need? And how much can we cut from a budget before we are in that need? Chances are, no matter how much we would cut the budget, we're still going to need more money. So where we get it,
Well, we have 116 million dollar general fund budget. So even if we go very conservative and say $20 million have been lopped off, how do we make up $20 million tomorrow next year?
we don't. We don't. I mean, I'm being perfectly honest. We don't make up $20 million. Maybe we'll find a way to make up 10 or 12 or 15, but something has got to go because for us to make up that money, it's taxation.
Mhm.
It's taxation of a form. Now, do we form an MSBU for the entire fire rescue department where there's certain contributions depending on where you live? How do we handle that? We have to get creative. We can't lose 20 million and continue to function as a government the way we are now.
Right.
I think everybody would agree on that. So how much can we conceivably lose without making it up? And if the number is 5 million, then we have to make up 15 million. Where do we make up the 15 million? Is it surcharges? Is it raising sales tax? Is it an MSBU and an MSTU? We have to get creative. But again, we don't know the numbers. How much can we adjust the budget versus how much do we have to come up with from alternate sources?
So the sales tax, that's the question. The commission has flirted with increasing the sales tax a couple of times. It hasn't done so, but it might be having that discussion again. Where do you stand on the sales tax increase by half a penny?
Well, I started to speak to that before, but for me, I don't see it as a negative. And I'll explain why. I think the perception is, oh, it's just another tax. It's just another tax. But I look at it as an investment. It's an investment because it gives us a dedicated source of funding for beach renourishment, which is mostly paid for by the state and federal government. Realizing we're still taxpayers, we're paying that bill, but it's money that is already out there. It's already allocated. And if we don't take
We-
it, it'll just go somewhere else.
You said it's mostly paid for by federal and state
Right.
dollars. Um, I
Our
mean,
obligation is 25%, I believe,
for which part?
for the beach renourishment.
Well, no, there's a 2.8 mile segment in Flagler Beach where our obligation is actually going to be 50% from here on. It was 35% for the first renourishment, but from here on, our obligation is 50%. Ours, as in Flagler County, it's
Right.
going to be 50% from for every renourishment on the federalized segment. All the other segments that's like about 15 miles or so of beachfront, it's entirely the county's responsibility. Now, if it can land state grants and appropriations as it has been, as it has in the past, that's very good, but it's not a given that it will continue to do so. So the responsibility is overwhelmingly the county's on all segments of beaches with a few differences along the way. Um, and it's a very heavy burden, um,
Well, the
which,
possibility exists that even with a half-cent sales tax, we may not be able to do it. We have to stay open to that. However, it's we're kind of caught in the middle because if we don't renourish the beaches, our tourism will slow down tremendously because people come here for a beach and
yeah.
they don't come here for an 8 foot wide beach. They
Mm,
come for a nice beach that they can use, they can lay out on, they can pitch a tent, have the kids throw a ball. We have to remember that because, and again, no slight to Palm Coast, but our tourism slogan is Palm Coast and the beaches of
yeah,
Flagler beaches. If the slogan becomes Palm Coast and nothing else, what? How are we going to attract long term? We might have somebody drive down here for dinner and go home, but how are we going to attract the people that stay here for a week and
yeah,
spend money? That's number one. Number two is the half-cent sales tax. Yes, it's a tax, but if you go out to dinner and spend $100, it's an extra 50 cents. And will you really miss the 50 cents if you're spending $100 on a meal? That's number one. Number two is it doesn't include the way I see it is structured, doesn't include your shopping at the grocery store, doesn't include your doctor's office, your prescriptions, your hospital visits, anything like that. Buying a vehicle, it's capped so that it comes out to a very low amount on your payment, about $1 on a 60-month payment plan, comes out to about $1. You're not gonna really pay attention to that, and it's your payment is 271 versus 270. And remember that it's on disposable income,
mhm.
disposable revenue that you spend in Flagler County. I had somebody ask me, well, what if I want to go buy a tractor? And I said, well, where in Flagler County are you going to buy it? Oh, I'm going to go up to Hastings. Then you don't pay the half cent.
Yeah,
But I live here. No, it's where you spend the money. That's why tourists are going to pick up a large segment of that and visitors.
yeah. Um, Well, we have a chance to speak about the beach specifically on a question in just a moment. But
Right.
do you take the CFO Blaise Ingolia? Do you take his claim that Flagler County wasted $59 million over those 5 years at face value?
Well, here's the first thing I'd like to point out is I was there at his conference. And
By the
at
way, did
one
you have
point he
any
said,
involvement in that? You
no,
were
I just sat
because
there and listened.
you did, but you didn't have any connection to him. You didn't. The
I never met the man, never. No, when he walked in, he walked by me. I didn't know who it was.
Okay, so
So,
yeah,
no.
all right.
So I was sitting there and I listened very intently. And I know that if that was recorded and you could find the recording, at one point he said that was 59 million last year. And then it was 5 years. So if he's that confused, then, I got to wonder. And I asked afterward, I went to one of his staffers and I asked her, I said, well, where's the backup paperwork? Can I see the backup paperwork for that? And she said, well, we don't have it, but you know, if
Yes,
you
we all
can't
did.
find it some,
We all did.
if you can't find it somewhere else, then reach out to us and we'll get it for you.
All right.
And I made a formal request and I'm still waiting for the request for the answer. And that was what, 4 months ago, I think.
You might be familiar with
No
the
answer.
attorney. He did the same thing. It's I think, a four-page, single-spaced request that's very extensive, and I don't think that they have received an answer.
No, and so I struggle with what are you hiding, sir? What are you hiding if you can't give us? You throw out these numbers, these incredible numbers. You point to Flagler County as being the most wasteful county so far, but you can't give me any specifics. You can't give me any backup. You can't give me any numbers. Did you just make them up? I know you said you had a method, but I can't even get the analysis of the method, let alone the dollar amount. So I
Is
just
there
find that I just find that very secretive.
or opportunistic?
Okay, I'll take that one too.
Let's set that aside, and even giving him the benefit of the doubt that it is over 5 years and that there was waste. I mean, there's unquestionably, you can always find something that you can consider waste, maybe if you look close enough. But let's do that exercise. Is there something that you could point in the county budget and say, well, this is waste, and we're not talking like piddly travel to Tampa or an excessive dinner or an excessive credit card, but something substantial that actually is a recurring issue that costs taxpayers a lot of money. Is there such waste going on that you could point out in one example, a single example of that kind of waste?
You know what? I'm going to say no, and I'm going to tell you why. Because I don't think it's necessarily waste. I think maybe it's not being creative with your financing. And here's my example for that is that let's say we need 20 new trucks, and just as an example.
Yeah.
And so that's going to cost us $25,000 each or $500,000. But what will it cost if we lease them?
Mm.
What if we lease them? The lease would probably be less. Your maintenance would be included in the lease, and at the end of the 2 year, 3 year, five, whatever the lease is, you hand the key back. You don't have residual value, but you're not paying for that residual value. And I'm not saying they don't do that. What I'm saying is let's look at something creative. If I see something or anybody sees something that, there's a different way to do that, I'm listening because maybe there is ways that we can save money without cutting off our nose. And so that's just one example of maybe that's something we could do. Maybe on the large scale equipment, instead of buying again, I'm using round numbers, so I don't know how much an excavator costs, but instead of buying an excavator for $750,000, what if we can lease it for 50 or 75,000
Mhm.
a year? Think of how many years that would, and you got to remember the useful life, the useful life of the vehicle or machine or whatever. Are we better off doing that? Because at the end of it, we're stuck with it and we got to auction it off for pennies on the dollar. And that's just one example of being creative.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they don't do that. I'm not saying that's what we have to do, but there's got to be arenas when it comes to parks and recreation, motor pool, fleet maintenance, um, all those different things. There might be a creative way to save some money. Is it
Now,
waste? No. Is
rel
it failing to think ahead or think outside the box? Yeah.
relatively speaking, those are still very small amounts compared to human capital. Is there, when you look at the employment, which is the I think 85% of your expenses, when you look at employment, employees, workers, is there anything there where you see, well, we don't need so many in that department. We don't need that department, or we don't need this service, and we can eliminate that human capital. Do you see any of that?
I haven't, to be perfectly honest with you. Maybe there are a few too many employees somewhere, but I haven't looked at the staffing like that. I will say that I have not seen a department that needs to be eliminated. There's a possibility for combining. Just as an example, I believe they combined HR with finance. I
Mhm.
believe HR is under finance now, and if they're not, that would be one way to combine. I don't know if that'll lead to bodies being gone, but it would certainly that's got to eliminate some cost.
That's actually the next question regarding consolidation of services, not just within the county, but I mean across the county with cities. Do you see any of that possible?
Well, remember, we're already doing it in that we, meaning the county, provides law enforcement services for Palm Coast, and that saves them millions and millions of dollars. And I've had this discussion where, and of course, my law enforcement background comes into play, where people say we should form our own police department for Palm Coast. And I look at them and tell them, it costs you about $130 million. And they're like, why? And the minimum recommended by the International Association of Chiefs of Police for staffing is 2.4 sworn personnel per thousand. So you can do the math on that. It's about 175, 180 sworn personnel for your police department. The average onboarding is about $100,000 for the person. So you do the math on that. But then we forget that each one needs a vehicle. So you're looking at 180, 190 cars. Fully outfitted law enforcement vehicle today with all the equipment and stuff like that is about $60,000 because I was just my agency that I'm affiliated with down south just ordered two and they were 65 each, fully outfitted, mind you, but still. So you need about 180 of those. You need computers, a couple hundred computers. You need to hire civilians on top of that for
Yeah,
records keeping and
yeah,
etc.
I see. I mean,
You're
it's
looking at $130 million. So, of course, it's a lot cheaper what Palm Coast is paying now to the sheriff's office than having to capitalize something like that. So, that is a consolidated service. Flagler County Fire Rescue provides the rescue units for the entire county. They are housed
mhm.
in some area, most areas with Palm Coast Fire Department. So, Palm Coast does not have rescue units to pay for, and those aren't cheap either. So, that's consolidated already. If you're talking about complete elimination of certain entities like they did, let's say in Jacksonville with Duval County, I don't know that that would be desirable to the citizenry. There's a lot of pride, maybe not misguided, but there's a lot of pride in having your own, like Flagler Beach having their own police department and their own fire department. They feel they have more local control that way. They feel that if they go in and they say, I would like to see more patrol on this road, that the chief of police there, whoever it is going to be more receptive and more responsive than if you have, and no slight on Rick Staley, but if you have the county as your responsibility, it's a lot harder to pay attention to a single road.
Yeah,
So I think that's going to stay as it is. Is there money to be saved? Probably, but it's a municipal choice.
yeah.
If they choose to spend that money and the taxpayers choose to continue to give that money for their own police department, their own fire department, then that's a local choice. And I think that should be respected.
In Marineland, there's a lot of pride in having their own website. We'll see
Excuse me while I take a
where that
sip.
goes. So the next question
Oh, boy.
is about the ESL, the environmentally sensitive lands.
Wait, I got to stop you. Marine land is a completely different animal because, as you and I both know, there's like four people that live there. So
Three,
three. Okay,
three.
somebody moved.
But I mean, I do love marine lands, but it's amazing how
Yes.
much work they take to cover.
I think that that would be a charter, and no disrespect, but I think that would be a charter best turned back to the state and let the county basically services all marine land anyway. I think their ad valorem tax, I think I read was $45,000.
It's you mean their revenue?
Yeah,
Their revenue is um, it's it's in that range. It's very low. I
yeah,
mean, basically, it's six parcels. It's six privately held parcels. But the amendment might again force their hand. And we came close to actually the county came close to buying along with the University of Florida and
right,
DEP, the Environmental Protection Division. They came very close to buying those four of those parcels from JDI, the Jim Jacoby,
right.
who owns them. And that deal is either has fallen apart or is delayed until September. But if that deal goes through, Marineland no longer exists because you no longer have the revenue to sustain the town. So Either way, between that or the amendment, the town is going to have to, really worry about its future as a
And
town.
the few people that are there and will be there in the future, it's the best thing that could happen to them.
Well, yeah, I mean, um, I don't think,
Again, we provide all the services now.
yeah. Um, so with ESL, the reason the environmentally sensitive land program is in question now, it's not so much in question, but it's coming up for renewal. So the
Right.
voters are going to be asked again to renew this. There are two things on the table. First is, of course, do you support a renewal because the county commission would have to put that renewal on the ballot. But second, there's been some discussions about changing the mission or the purpose of the ESL. I think Kim Carney is the one who's raised the question, well, do we really need any more lands? Could we not use some of this money for beach protection, beach renourishment, or redirect the purpose of the ESL? So first, do you support putting the ESL back on the ballot, and would you support it publicly and openly and support its passage? And well, to the extent that you can. Personally, you can. As a commission, you can't. But second, do you support Kim Carney's approach of perhaps changing the mission of the ESL?
Personally, yes, I do support it. The people, when it was originally voted on, the people felt that this was a good program. Now it's going to come up for a vote. Do the people feel the same way? We'll find out at the vote. Personally, yes, I think it's a good thing because once something is gone, it's gone forever. And anything we can do to preserve the heritage and the history of the county, as well as not have the county turn into an asphalt, the whole county is a bunch of asphalt and houses. It's not bad to have some preservation in there. Future, maybe a park if we can afford it, but maybe a park, maybe some other type of recreation. Who knows? But once it's gone, once it's bulldozed, once it's built on, or once it's neglected, that is gone, period. Um, so we have to look at, and I throw this out. What's the definition of environmentally sensitive lands? Could it be the beach? Could it be the beach be considered environmentally
ESL.
sensitive?
Yeah.
Thank you. ESL. Got it. And if it is considered ESL, can some of the money that's raised through the program to assist with beach renourishment? And honestly, I don't have that answer. Does it require rewriting the ordinance that was passed? Does it require something else? I don't know. So I can't give you the definitive answer, but I would not be totally opposed to some of the money, not all the money, but a portion of the money being designated for the beach, simply because it is critically eroded. It is absolutely sensitive lands because once it's gone and the dunes are gone, the whole island is gone. And then after the island is gone, Palm Coast starts to go away.
Would you support changing the ratio, the actual amount that it levies on your tax bill? Increasing it? It's a very
It's
small
such a
amount right
negligible,
now, right?
that's what I was going to say. It's such a negligible amount. But I'm not sure what it is as a percentage. I don't have that in front of me.
Um,
But let's say it's a 1/4%. If you wanted to move it to 1/3%, wouldn't have a problem. If you say I want to make it 4%, I got a problem with that because now you're really negatively impacting the taxes. What it is now, I don't know that anybody notices it.
I think it's
And so
so it's 12.5 cents per
per
thousand
thousand,
dollars. Yeah, 12. So basically, if you've got a $300,000 house and you're homesteaded at 50,000 today, you're paying $31. So
I'm
uh,
happy to contribute $31 to keep buying lands that will be protected forever. And also, if a portion of it goes to the beach, I don't have an issue with that. Again, if you want to multiply that significantly, now it becomes $200. Yeah, I
well, not 200, but maybe 50.
again, 50, I don't have a problem with that. But there are people who even that small increase could hurt. So we need to take that in consideration. But then again, if it goes by your your property bill and your appraised value or your appraised value, then maybe it's not going to impact people that much. Maybe it's only a $5 raise per year.
Yeah.
And pretty much everybody can afford that. It's one less latte.
Mhm. So beach protection, the plan that Petita had put forward, did you think that it was a sound plan?
Yes, with overall, yes, but I'm not sure we could afford it. I'm not sure it's fair. And if you're talking about the MSBUs and the MSTUs, I think that could be challenged as disparate treatment. I'm not sure. I'm not an attorney, but it just seems to me if you're going to overcharge a lot more to this one versus this one, but there is a significant benefit to everyone. And I know people say, I don't, people from Palm Coast or wherever will say, I never use the beach, I never go there, I never this, why should I pay? But there's a bigger issue, and a lot of that is water. Let's put the tourism aside for a minute. It's water. And water goes in a certain direction. And this is, I'm oversimplifying, but remember the intracoastal
Hmm.
is at least partly controlled by the beach, in that you have levels out there, and the higher the water level not being stopped that hits the dune, you have more saltwater intrusion. And the water goes underground, but I know that's simplifying it, but the water level rises for the beach. It gets closer to the beach. The intracoastal rises. When the
Hmm.
intracoastal rises, and I've seen it, you have houses in the C section where not only are their docks underwater or their backyards underwater, but it comes knocking at the door of the house. So water has to go somewhere. Will it completely save that issue? Of course not. But could it help with the issue? I believe it could.
We're the only county without a beach management plan.
I'm well aware of that.
So,
Yes.
I mean, would you agree that we can't continue to be without a beach management plan?
No, we have to have one. Yes, I agree with you. We have to have one.
But the cost then becomes the issue. And however
The
expensive.
cost of the plan or the cost of the implementation, let me ask you.
Well, I mean, I see the two as the same. A plan is the implementation because a plan without implementation is really no plan. It's just an idea. We all agree that the beaches have to be protected, but we have not gotten to the point of implementation. And the Petito plan had gotten us as close to it as ever, right? And then it fell apart. The plan didn't fall apart, but the implementation fell apart. What will you be doing as a county commissioner to bring us back to a position where we can have a plan and it can be implemented?
That's really a tough question. It sounds like an easy one, but it's really a tough question because there are people who believe we should do nothing with the beach. Just let it go.
You are not one of
And
those.
whatever.
You are not one of
No,
those
I don't.
people, right?
No, for
Yeah.
the obvious reasons. I am not for the obvious reasons. And it's not about protecting just real estate. It's about protecting the whole barrier island of which thousands of people live. That's number one. Number two is, and I keep going back to tourism, it's a tourism engine by which if there's no tourism, there will be significant fiscal shortfalls. Over to put the amendment to the side now, just from lack of tourism, it would hurt us tremendously. Okay, so we need that. Third thing is we need to be able to figure out, we need to I need to stop and regroup. We need not just a beach management plan. Yes, we need that. We need a water management plan on top of it. Our beach management plan has to take into account that we have an entire barrier island here that's being attacked from both sides. It's being attacked from the intracoastal as well as from the ocean. Water has to go somewhere. I don't care if it's all the way out on Daytona North or it's next door to me. Water has to go somewhere. And I was talking to a couple of people the other day, and I said, remember what the Eastern Continental Divide is. It doesn't run through Florida, but remember, everything east of it the water goes toward the ocean. Now, of course, there's lakes and rivers and things to intercept that, but the bottom line is the water's got to go somewhere. So if Dead Lake fills up and it goes over to Crescent Lake, from Crescent Lake, it goes through Dunn's Creek and comes out at the St. Johns River, which strangely enough runs south to north. It empties out, wait for it, in the Atlantic Ocean. And then from the Atlantic Ocean, do the currents carry it south or north, or a combination thereof? So there we are, basically going in a circle and putting back the water that we hope to get away from. So we need to build that barrier. We need to have a plan, and we need to find ways to enact that barrier so that C-section doesn't flood, so that Daytona North doesn't wind up underwater every time there's a heavy storm, and so we don't lose the barrier island and have thousands of people displaced.
But then you've basically formulated a question that is not anymore, we can't afford it, but can we afford not to?
That's kind of a good question. How can we afford not to? How do we turn our backs on so many people throughout our county? Because again, it's not just the people on the barrier island, it's not just the people that live along the ocean, but it's everybody. It's the C-section of Palm Coast. It's what happens when a weir fails or it's overwhelmed. Water's got to go somewhere. It's a small part, but again, the beach plan, we need to have that, but we also need a water management plan. And if that's in conjunction with the beach plan, so be it. But we need to plan for all of that, not just the beach. We need to plan for all of the water issues, the water table, the aquifer, all that needs to be addressed in a master plan. If you want to then break out a small section or a partial section for the beach, great. But we need to have a water management plan. And I feel strongly about that.
Those who say that it's pointless to do anything, we should just leave the beach as it is, have a point, because in the long run, it is pointless. The seas are rising. We're not doing anything about it. And the barrier island is going to lose. So why intervene now since it's a losing battle in the long run?
Because we can stave it off. It is in the long run, but how many decades or even 100 years or more? But let's stave it off for now so that people don't have to immediately tomorrow change their whole lifestyle. Because at the rate we're going, it's going to happen sooner rather than later. I think you'd agree, and everybody would agree with that. But can we stave it off for a while and maybe find alternatives in that time? For example, the Indian River Lagoon had a huge problem with flooding, and there were these large cement uh, blocks with holes in the center that were used to cut down on the current
Mhm.
and really cut down a lot on the flooding and the erosion they were having, specifically the erosion. Maybe there's alternatives. I see people on Facebook, they put up things like, why don't we have not a pier, but the boy, I'm blanking on the word, but it's the things that go stone, like stone breakers that
Oh,
go
yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I apologize for not coming up with the right word,
No, no, I see
but
what you mean. Yeah.
why don't we have something like that? Why don't we have a program? There are many, many. I've been to countries in the Caribbean that have exactly that, and it breaks the waves, it breaks the current. They suffer far less damage from storms. Why
Mhm.
don't we have something like that? There are other creative ways that we can protect the beach, not just throwing sand there and hoping for the best.
Yeah.
I really believe that we can incorporate that as well as beach renourishment and stave off losing the barrier island for literally 100 or more years.
So this is a question on law enforcement.
Okay.
The sheriff's budget has increased 87% in the last 5 years, although the county's population has increased 4 times less than that by 22%, right? Fire rescue has increased, fire rescue and emergency management together have increased a combined 80%. So, in light of the low crime rate and taking account of population growth, where do you put the point where expansion in public safety budgets outweigh the benefits of continuing to expand those budgets? Where, or become a more of a burden on the county than a benefit? Because, where do we say, you know, we are covered, it's enough?
Well, I could ask the question of when are you comfortable with that much safety and no more? But let me just say that, first of all, we live in Flagler County is a community in the top 1% for safety in the United States. That to me is important. I think the Sheriff Staley has done a great job. His people have done a wonderful job. I believe that there's room for improvement like anywhere else, like any department, but he's a constitutional officer. So we leave that to him, and rightfully so. Um, I believe, and kind of a little bit from when I was working there, I saw that some of the numbers, as far as personnel and vehicles and equipment and all that, were lacking, and some of it significantly. Population has grown quite a bit. So if you were behind the eight ball to begin with,
Mhm.
you got to really keep going to get in front of it. And at the same time, take into consideration the growing population. And people also lose sight of the fact that we're not just, and this was one of the issues I had with Mr. Angolia, quite frankly, is he's just using the population and nothing else basically for his numbers. But going back to what I've been saying constantly, we're a tourism centered economy. So what happens if we stay flat or only increase to serve the population? What happens when 15,000 people come to Bike Week? And we get a lot of them here. What happens Biketoberfest? Same thing. What happens to Flagler Beach next year when they're going to do the fireworks show and they get 10,000 extra people in town? What do they do? Or if they're having to cut their police department and fire department because the money's not there, what do we do then? I will never, as a county commissioner, vote to sacrifice public safety. That's if people don't like that, then I'm sorry.
Well, I don't think anybody
Flagler,
would.
wait, let me get to Flagler County Fire Rescue too, because you brought that up.
Yeah.
Flagler County Fire Rescue, and I always give the disclaimer of both my sons are firefighter paramedics with Flagler County. So this is not about them. This is about us, you and I, and everybody else in here. Flagler County Fire Rescue last year had more than 20,000 calls for service. That's Flagler County. That's not Palm Coast. Of those, more than 15,000 were medical calls handled by 10 rescues. 10 rescues handled more than 15,000 calls. Each year, we're increasing population. Even if it's only 3,000, 4,000 people, and we're not adding rescues to keep up with that. Let's be honest. If you're calling rescue, you don't care what station they come from. You just want them there yesterday. You want them there in an hour. You don't want them there in an hour. You want them there in a minute. So Chief Tucker has a plan. Chief Tucker's plan is to increase by one rescue every 3 years. And he's putting that into place. But you know what it takes? It takes money. A rescue unit is not just a truck. It's a very highly specialized unit that's probably going to come in at about 300,000, but you also have to staff it 24/7, 365 with paramedics.
Mhm.
So there's a cost involved. They were also behind the eight ball for a lot of years. So they're playing catch up as well. The next thing you got to remember too is with the deputies, with firefighters, paramedics, all that, their salaries don't go down, they go up. The state requirements for their pension go up, social security goes up, all these things go up. So your choice is to pay it or cut services, and you're never going to cut services in public safety. That's in the amendment. You cannot do that. So when you look at things like that, you ask Sheriff Staley and say, do you really need this, and this? And if he says I really do, and he can justify it, then I think it's part of the budget that we need to allocate. Can I sit down with him as a commissioner and say, look, is there anything that maybe you could put off for a year or put off for 2 years or do without? And he's a reasonable guy. So I think, yes, there might be something he can come up with.
Was the
Or he could,
helicopter needed if we could have gone 24 hours with Fireflight?
I don't know the numbers on that, but I can't answer that because I don't know the numbers. In other words, I can't look at you and say, well, if we go to 24 hours of Fireflight and hire two pilots so that you have one, and of course you need a third, for whoever takes vacation or is out sick or whatever. And on top of that, would we be able to do the maintenance at the same cost or less than? I don't know the numbers. If you showed me the numbers and said you absolutely could, then I'd probably question it. But absent that, and taking the sheriff at his word, which I know, not being a commissioner, I have to take him at his word right now. We can't sit down, commissioner to sheriff, and say, look, dot, dot, dot. I have to take him at his word because I'm still just a member of the public.
Hmm.
I have feelings and I hear things, but it's not fact. And unless I have the facts as a commissioner, I'm not going to say yes or no to that. I will tell you that I have great confidence in the ability of the county administration and commission to look at things in an objective way. And I may be wrong, but I promise you one thing, when I'm sitting there, I will look at things in an objective way, and I will look at it from the good of the people as well as the services.
You were mentioning the fire rescue, the 15,000 calls per year for 10 rescues. That does work out to 4 calls per day per rescue. Is that very high?
It's not it's Here's the thing. You have a rescue in Daytona North. That unit is not going to get called out as much as the unit by Coles, because in the city center, you have the majority of calls and it spreads out from there. So you'll have some stations that will run 12, 14 calls in a 24-hour period, and you have some that'll run two, but you can't afford to move them from where they're at. Again, if you're in Daytona North and the closest rescue is Bunnell, you're going to wait a long time and you could lose a loved one. Chief Tucker does the research on this so that everybody will get a certain level of response time. And they're on his website. I can't quote them, but most of the response times are well within what you would expect, even in Daytona North, in all these spread out areas. The problem is we have a spread out county in terms of service like that. And I can remember back when, and you probably can remember too, there were so few rescues that they would get busy and they'd have to move the one from Flagler Beach
Yes.
up to Old Kings in 100 so
Yeah.
that they were staged because the majority of calls would be west of there.
Right. That wasn't so many years ago. Right.
Right. So again, you have to play catch up. So we're playing catch up now. We'll continue to play catch up because people are moving in, more businesses come in, that's more services as well. So of the public safety expenditures, yeah, it's a lot, but we're playing catch up and we're trying to maintain. And that to me is that's number one. After five and all weekend, the only visible arms of government are law enforcement and fire department. And that's what you have to have.
At least the ones we see, because obviously there's an enormous amount of work that goes on that we don't see that is still government, civilian government that keeps this keeps this world going.
That's true,
Uh,
but the
right.
visible arm are those two entities.
Let's talk about the airport. It's unquestionably a great economic asset for the county and the city. Is it also a noise and pollution problem, as some of the residents nearby um, have claimed or continue to say? And if so, what would you do about it?
Well, I'm not an expert, so I will not say anything about the pollution claims because I haven't seen any studies for or against. As for the noise, sure, there's noise by an airport. Absolutely, there is. ITT planned this out and they put homes there. Was that a smart thing to do? The airport was there from World War II. So the airport was there first. And I'm not minimizing what folks are saying, but maybe it would have been better to have, say, a half mile or a mile buffer around the airport, made that all industrial or all commercial, instead of putting houses right up to the border of the airport. But people also knew the airport was there. And you really can't assume that the airport will not change. It'll always be small. It'll always only have a few flights and et cetera, et cetera. So am I saying they're wrong? No. Am I saying that there are solutions? If you're that unhappy with it, The airport was there first. And that sounds cold, but I sympathize with the folks. It's just like building next to a racetrack and thinking there's only two events a year, and the next thing you know, there's an event every weekend. You built there, you bought there. Sorry, but that's to be expected. I liken it to, and I'm sure everybody's driven down 95 or another interstate like that, and you see where it was all woods, and now there's a housing development there, and people are complaining about the noise from the interstate. So, what was there first? Your housing development, which has been there 2 years, or the interstate that's been there since the 70s? And it's kind of the same thing. So, what do? They put up these cement walls. They're supposed to cut down on the noise. And if you've ever been on the other side of one, it doesn't help. And
Mm.
it's kind of the same thing at the airport. No matter what they do, short of shutting it down, which we're not going to do, it's a very valuable enterprise for this county. There isn't a whole lot that you can do. If you limit the flights, they'll go elsewhere and you'll lose the revenue.
The last question is about your felonies and misdemeanors in the past. So, not the ones you've charged, but the ones you've been subjected to. I take it there's been, have you ever been charged with a felony, a misdemeanor anywhere in Flagler, Florida, the United States, other than a speeding ticket, or faced any civil action other than a divorce, anything like that? I would,
Well, I'm still a certified law enforcement officer in the state of Florida. So if I had a felony, I wouldn't be that.
right.
No, I've never been arrested for a misdemeanor. In
Never
my
charged
law
either,
enforcement,
right? Never charged either, right?
no, no, never charged.
Just to be clear.
Never charged.
All right.
Charged a
Uh,
lot of people, but never charged.
Civil
You know,
action?
civil action. I've been in law enforcement. Of course, you're going to get sued. You know, the department, the individual officer, this and that, and you almost always, 99% of the time, it's on there to throw enough against the wall to see what sticks. And the first thing that happens is a law enforcement officer will be dropped from the case,
So,
dropped from the because they're trying to drag people in
right. So you have been
so they
sued
can.
in the context of your work as a law
Oh
enforcement
yeah,
officer.
oh yeah.
And have you ever lost one of those lawsuits?
Once
What was
in
that?
my early career, and I won't say I lost. The judgment was 50-50. I was in it. I was hit in the face with a load of mace, and I got in the ensuing struggle with a woman who, as it turns out, had just dropped off 5 kilos of cocaine and still had the residual in her bag, and got into a fight. I was struggling with her. I was having a little trouble seeing, obviously, and breathing. I mean, she emptied the whole canister in my face. And so I was fighting with her. We fell down to the ground and her shoulder broke because I
Mhm.
was on top of her trying to hold her. And that's all I could do to just hold her or wrap my legs around her legs just to keep her from kicking me. And myself, the department, etc., was sued. I was dropped from the lawsuit.
Mhm.
The department was still on. The city that I was working for was still on. And I was found 50% comparative negligence
Mhm.
on the judgment.
Okay.
So, yes, I take that personally. Did I have to pay the money? No. The city and the insurance paid it, but I still take it personally as being found at least partially at fault.
Do you remember the year when this happened?
Whew, 80, 81,
You were still
maybe.
at the beginning of your career.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was at the beginning of my career in South Florida. I already had some experience from Illinois, but I had never been maced in the face.
Were in your professional life, have you had any demotions or any disciplinary actions, any internal affairs investigations that you were subjected to?
Yes, I was. There was a couple of politically motivated actions against me, and I was actually demoted from assistant chief to captain and then re-promoted to assistant chief. And it was a political game that they were playing with me um, because I was friends with someone else.
This was in what
In other
jurisdiction?
words, South Miami.
And okay.
Yeah.
And
I was very close to one of the commissioners as a friend,
mhm.
and he was at great odds with two of the other commissioners. And so the two commissioners used their influence upon the city manager to go after me. And the city manager wanted to keep his job, so that's what happened. And then after a certain amount of time, they came along and they said, this should have never happened. Well, you're back. as assistant chief. Okay,
And you stayed assistant chief for a while after that happened.
until I retired.
And any internal affairs issues in your law enforcement career?
Not really. I will tell you that I was a stickler for the rules. So we had what was called the use of force report,
Right.
and guys would, it really did cover anytime you took somebody down at gunpoint. You had to, and there were armed subjects. And I'm not going to say, oh, please do me a favor. We do what we have to do to go home at night. And I would always fill out the use of force. And there were some supervisors who were negligent like that. So I would have use of force reports. They're not internal affairs reports. They're just listed uses of force. And it goes
Right.
into the record as in the internal affairs record, but not as an internal affairs
Oh, right.
investigation.
That's certainly not what I meant. I mean,
No
force
other, no,
reports are routine. They happen
right.
in every agency. But
In regard to investigations for
right.
negligence or criminal or anything, no,
So internally
no,
at any department that you served, you were never the subject of an internal affairs investigation
no
or
official
anything
investigation,
like
no.
that. Very good. Well, that wraps it up. So I appreciate very much the time, the extensive amount of time that you took and reserved for us, and wish you the very best of luck in the weeks ahead. And I'm sure we'll speak again soon.
I appreciate it. And then I just want to close with the one thing I can promise you is that I won't lie. I won't make stuff up. If I don't know something, I will tell you. If I'm unsure of something, I will tell you. And I will always tell the truth because it's the easiest thing to remember.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Feldman, very much.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day.
Thank you.